Lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, have spoken and questioned, and Democrats defending, and Republicans. You saw Jim Jordan, and you saw the previous Representative Rich McCormick from Georgia brought his own audio, and it was spicy. We'll get into all of it. The nation remembers the cliff we were pushed off of as COVID lockdowns and the confusion about medicines and mask wearing were tearing our beloved America apart. One man stood at the center of the slow and at times wrong information about how to best protect ourselves. The White House Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the man on the hot seat today before this subcommittee on the Hill on the coronavirus pandemic. He's been in the House for about 2.5 hours now, and the last time we saw him on Capitol Hill was when he was retiring in 2022. Dr. Fauci claims he always kept an open mind about the possibility that COVID leaked from a laboratory in China. You saw Jim Jordan tearing that apart. Fauci says he'd never tried to cover up government records on the origins of COVID-19. There were emails about how to keep stuff out of your emails in case you're FOIA'd by someone he was advised by at the time. We've heard some of those emails read aloud. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts Emily Compagno and Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth and Fox News contributor and host of The Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio, Guy Benson. So, Guy, the last hour and a half or so of this, past the statements, were a back and forth with Fauci at the center. How did you see it?
I thought one of the most revealing exchanges was with Congressman John Joyce. He's a Republican from Pennsylvania. He's a Johns Hopkins trained doctor. He wasn't just lecturing at Fauci, he was asking questions. And Fauci was deflecting and obfuscating, I think, repeatedly. And one of the themes that I think we've just seen over the last few hours is Fauci, I think it's safe to say, has an extremely high self-regard. And despite his new spin, he did, in fact, claim to basically embody science, posing for every photo shoot, constantly on television, in our faces for years. He wanted all of the credit and all of the attention when it suited him. But when evidence is directed to him about huge mistakes and dishonesty, oh, well, that wasn't him. Well, technically, that was someone else. Oh, my senior advisor wasn't really an advisor. Oh, that email doesn't. That's an aberration. Dishonesty, slipperiness. I don't believe him.
Wow. Before we go on, I had asked to pull this because we all had a visceral reaction to this when we watched. It's Georgia Republican Congressman McCormick, who's a doctor himself. He started there. He connected with Fauci a bit off the top, and then he played some audio. It's a recording of Dr. Fauci, where Fauci says that making people's lives difficult will encourage them to get vaccinated. Just watch.
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and that's not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context.
Lisa, that moment seems seminal.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to namaste over here so I don't...
Well, we did bleep out the bad words that Fauci started.
Well, I'll try not to. Okay, wow. And they did, right? People lost their livelihoods because they didn't want to get an experimental vaccine. When most vaccines have 5 to 10 years of safety data, this one had less than a year for a virus that was never a threat to their life because of their age or being in good health, or they already had natural immunity and they'd been previously exposed to the virus and did not need the vaccine. They lost their lives, or they lost their livelihoods and the ability to put food on the table because of this man. You had mentioned earlier being pushed off the cliff as a nation. Dr. Fauci pushed us off. He did irreparable harm to this country from the start of what all signs pointing to his funding of gain of function at the Wuhan lab, and then censoring anyone who said that about the origins of the virus, to his bad guidance that he gave the nation, which has all been wrong, starting from the beginning. He said COVID was 10 times more lethal than the flu. That was not true, never was true. Even at the beginning, we knew that we were basing decisions off of bad data. He said it was a conspiracy to say the virus came from the lab. He pushed lockdowns, which were a lie. He said the vaccine was dead ends for people, that they weren't going to be able to transmit the virus. That was a lie. They knew it. He said masks work. Everything he said was a lie to this nation. And then as a result of it, a wrecked economy. Kids will never catch up academically. Unprecedented overdoses, suicides in the nation as well. A loss of liberty that we will never get back. America is no longer America because of that man. So I'm sorry, Dr. Fauci, you are a liar and you are a terrible person, and you should be punished for what you've done to this nation.
Here's Dr. Fauci from earlier in the hearing on that 6 feet of distance, that guidance that he said, oh, everybody else was in charge of it, but you know they all consulted him. He was the guy at the top. Let's watch.
The issue of the 6 foot distance, and I made the statement that it just appeared. And that got taken at like, I don't know what's going on, it just appeared. It actually came from the CDC. The CDC was responsible for those kinds of guidelines for schools, not me. So when I said that it just appeared, it appeared. Was there any science behind it? What I meant by no science behind it is that there wasn't a controlled trial that said, compare 6 foot with 3 feet with 10 feet. So there wasn't that scientific evaluation of it. What I believe the CDC used for their reason to say 6 feet is that studies years ago showed that when you're dealing with droplets, which at the time that the CDC made that recommendation, it was felt that the transmission was primarily through droplet, not aerosol, which is incorrect because we know now aerosol does play a role. That's the reason why they did it. It had little to do with me, since I didn't make the recommendation, and my saying there was no science behind it means there was no clinical trial that proved that. That's just one of the things that got a little distorted in the response to that.
He was the nation's top doctor. He was the White House medical advisor, yet none of it was on his watch. By the way, Emily, it wasn't just the erroneous 6 feet of distance. It was also the masking for children. Twice he was asked about this, at least 2 times during the hearing. On the first time, he said he didn't recall reading any science that would point to that. On the second time he was asked, he said that there was no way to do research on children and masking previous to the pandemic or during it. Well, I guess both things can be true, but it can also be true that he was wrong and he lied about it.
And he will never admit that or even acknowledge that possibility, Harris. I see in him an attempt to distinguish and create a chasm between him and, at the time, directives that he stated from a position of concrete and penultimate authority from, for example, the CDC. So right now he's saying, oh, that was the CDC. There was absolutely no distinction to the American people, to the White House, to all of us that were looking for guidance. And there was certainly no acknowledgement at the time, hey, guys, we're all scientists, so we're not going to rule anything out. We are seeing him right now in this testimony say any type of pushback whatsoever, any type of analysis of me, he is saying against the science. But a true scientist wouldn't have ruled out things immediately. A true scientist wouldn't have hid behind ideology that he calls BS when the face of a nation said, let's explore all of this. Let's take our time. Let's take it step by step because lives are at stake. So the irony is that we are sitting here and having to hear from him that he considers religious objection to be ideological BS, that he considers certain origin concepts, theories, or possibilities to be ideological BS, to be absolutely ruled out from the get-go, and then to him to say to totally shame and civically cut off and punish those Americans that dared to take their time considering their bodies and their health, and then he digs in his heels and says essentially, oh, not me. He is, at a minimum, a narcissist. And the problem is that, as the New York Times says, he's unfairly bearing the brunt of the failures of the pandemic. But it's because he dug in so hard at being that authority the entire time.
I don't even understand why they would defend him on this. I mean, he was supposed to be the best that we had. So either he wanted the job and did it diligently. I mean, he wasn't even seeing patients. Congressman Jim Jordan pressed Fauci on why he and the Biden administration refused to acknowledge the laboratory leak theory, the lab leak from China. Let's watch.
Why was it so important the virus not have started in a lab?
Wasn't so important that the virus not. We don't know. We
Well,
know
it was important to someone in the Biden administration, so much so that the top people at Meta, the top people at Facebook are asking, why are we getting all this pressure to downplay the lab leak theory? And we have an email from June of the same year, June 4th, 2021, saying the same thing. It was certainly important to somebody.
Well, what has that got to do with me?
I'm asking you because you're the expert on the coronavirus. I'm saying, why was the administration so pushing not to have the lab leak theory as something that was viable?
I can answer that. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire
You kept
process.
an open mind, Dr. Fauci, open mind.
That is correct.
I want to go inside the White House at that time with Kayleigh, because there was a reason why, as Emily, everybody on the couch has said, we were perched to see what he would say. We thought he was the best among us. And you and former President Trump thought that at first, too.
Absolutely. Look, this is deeply frustrating to watch, having spent the year in the White House